Hello and a very warm welcome. My name is Sasha Farbach. And you're watching Press Corner on TVP World, our weekly Sunday chat about the past week's key events with our colleagues in the media here in the heart of Europe. Joining us today are my guests, Jacek Żakowski, columnist, Collegium Civitas, Alexander Papko, journalist of Bielsat and political scientist, and Bogdan Nahailo, editor-in-chief of the Kiev Post, and last but not least, Dmitry Balkubets, political expert. Welcome to all of you to Press Corner. Now we're going to be focusing on two main topics. Will take us here in the heart of our region and across Europe. So we'll start with our very first one. Now, a Polish judge who had access to the country's military secrets has fled to Belarus and asked for asylum on Monday. Despite his attempts to justify the decision with political convictions, Polish authorities view his actions as that of a spy for a foreign country.
This is Tomasz Schmidt, a man who served the Polish justice system for many years. But on Monday he made headlines after fleeing Poland and seeking asylum in Belarus. This is how he explained his decision.
It is a sign of protest against Poland's policy towards Belarus and Russia.
Schmidt also said that he believes Poland will eventually become directly involved in the war in Ukraine, pushed by its allies like the United States or Great Britain. Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko deserves praise for running a blossoming country, added Schmidt on the same day. He lost his judicial immunity and job on Thursday. The Polish Supreme Court has also authorized his detention.
It is of great concern to the Polish services today that the investigation or checking of some persons and events that could indicate some activity and influence of Russian and Belarusian services has been interrupted and the power apparatus broadly defined.
Before defection, Tomasz Schmidt had a dynamic judicial career in Poland. In 2012, he was appointed to the Warsaw Administrative Court after serving on district and regional courts in the central region of Mazovia. A significant milestone in his career came when he joined the Ministry of Justice Verification Committee in 2017.
Now we'll discuss this further. Now, Jacek, we'll start with you. A shocking case here, not just, I think, for Poland, but for the world, really. So, I mean, let's look at also the profile of this man, of Judge Schmidt. I mean, a judge on very, very key matters, but tell us a little bit about more and why this has surprised you here so much.
It's not surprising for me, anyway. I mean, we know for years that Polish state is infiltrated by Russian secret services and Belarusian secret services very, very deeply. We have many books about that. What was shocking for me was that it was so unfamiliar for Polish secret services. Mm-hmm. They saw, when they saw books, famous books by famous journalists like Grzegorz Rzeczkowski or Tomasz Piątek, concerning the infiltration, they were saying, well, there we have doubts, we watch, and so on, for years. So what was shocking was, for me, the reaction of the government. It was the first time the government reacted seriously to this kind of problem. And, well, how it happened. It was not a coincidence that, in my belief, that Tomasz Schmidt has so good career under peace government or other far-right government in Poland, because there are many connections in these groups with Eastern powers, say, not only Russia and Belarus, but also China. Mm-hmm. Chinese influence, especially in the President Palace, is very, very deep, and we see it many times. So, well, I hope this will change this approach to the one in which Polish government will be more, say, serious about secret services in Poland, reconstruction, which I think is necessary. And about influences of the Eastern powers.
All right, okay. So, I mean, we've just heard that Jacek, he's not surprised by this. Let's go and cover this a little bit more, Alexander. I mean, what does this say also about the reputation of the Polish secret services, the Polish security apparatus? I mean, never mind that, from the previous government to now, but generally, what does this say, and how will this recover? How will intelligence services here in Poland recover?
It's a difficult question because this defection of the high-ranking judge it's a huge blow to the Polish security apparatus, which had quite a good opinion during this war which Russia wages against Ukraine, because we had no major accidents like it happened, for instance, in Czech Republic in 2014-15 when the munition storages were blown up. So some such cases did not happen in Poland. Here we had also a very huge case of disclosure of spy network, which comprised several students, basically from different countries east from Poland. So it was citizens of Belarus, Russia, and Ukraine who were just approached by the agents and proposed money for some seemingly insignificant work. So it was, this work led to spying on the traffic between Poland and Ukraine, including military traffic. So this case was disclosed by the Polish security services. They had a good reputation. Now it's a huge blow in this reputation.
Are you sure it was disclosed by Polish secret services? Were they not Ukrainian secret services that disclosed and provided the information?
Interesting point. Yeah.
Or maybe U.S. secret services. So we don't know. But as I said,
it's there to ponder, right?
Yeah,
it's a question.
People felt secure, but I would like to point out about the involvement of Belarusian secret services. So any people who dealt with Belarusian secret services or met them once in life doubt in their professionality. So really, I cannot imagine that they have personnel and they have money to buy some people in Poland. Maybe much more assets, much more ideological coverage, much more people and mastership of this belongs to Russian secret services. About Belarusian ones, just one example. Recently, they found secret services in Lithuania and Poland, found people who were involved in attacking Leonid Volkov. He's one of the allies of one of the collaborators of Navalny. Russian opposition leader, killed in prison. So he's a refugee in Lithuania, and he was attacked by Polish citizens, which were hired by a Belarusian national who worked for Russian secret services.
Right.
In Poland, there are thousands and thousands of Belarusian political oppositionists who are walking openly on the streets, and during these 5 years or even 25 years of dictatorship in Belarus, we had no attacks or intimidation on Belarusian opposition, not because Lukashenko is so humanist and do not want to kill, kidnap or harass political opponents. No, they really afraid of them. And if we look at the documents like military doctrine of Belarus, which were recently published, or national security doctrine, the main threat, military threat to Lukashenko regime is considered to be Belarusian oppositionists living outside the country. So they hate them, but they cannot approach them. And so I believe rather that it was a case of Russian secret services, if it is still the case of secret service, because I still accept the situation when Thomas Schmidt just proposed himself his services to secret services of Russia or Belarus.
Right. So on that note, that's an interesting point. I want to come over now to you, Dmitry, because obviously this wasn't probably just a one-off. Clearly, this must have been something that had been gone on for some time. Right now we're looking probably very much about, espionage cases already being opened. He's lost his immunity as well. Speak to us about the timing of this. How long could he have been, and potentially others, already involved at such a high level here in the Polish government potentially?
Yeah, I think it's interesting phenomenon when so high-level persons flew to the authoritarian countries. In past, it was just a few cases in Soviet Union period when some persons go to Soviet Union. It was a fantastic case for propaganda. I believe that this person, probably Tomasz Schmidt, yeah, probably he was have some problems with Polish government, and that is why he now go to Belarus. I don't believe that he was a spy man or something else, because he haven't a lot of secrets. I think so.
But he did have access. He was ruling on, I think, some cases, and he was supposed to on, I think, even the next few weeks about clearance to NATO. I think this is, he had access to a lot of very important things.
Probably yes, probably no. But I think that firstly he was have some problems with law in Polish. It's the main reason, I think. And in future, I believe that Belarusian propaganda and Russian propaganda will use this man for TV show, for some other meetings. Probably Lukashenko will decide, and a new meeting will be with him. But in future, I believe that Belarusian authorities will kill him, like Chichko was a person who was died in Belarus. In my view, he was killed by KGB because he no need for this authoritarian country, and this is risk for this person, and that is only one case. But I believe that Belarusian and Russian authorities will be prepare a new attack against Euro countries, Euro Union countries. A few weeks ago, probably NATO intelligence said about that will be some fires, will be some murders, assassinations, or something, another attack, cyber attacks. And today in Poland was a fire, big fire, and tried some store. I believe it's probably interesting case because for a short time was ruined a big place of this building. Probably it's also some attack from somebody. Why not if we analyzing this without any information? But my view, probably yes, it's one of the attack against infrastructure of some equipment or something else, and probably why we not think that is Belarusian or Russian authorities organize it, because it was before in London the same case or in some other countries, and I think it's now it's very important to thinking about new cases in the future. We must be think that the target of these attacks, it's a leader of opposition, of politics, critical infrastructure like energy sector, like some military equipment or placement. It's very, very important to analyze this situation in the future.
Right, indeed. And I think you pointed out there a few things, Bogdan, about infrastructure attacks. If we scale it out now as well, Bogdan, if we look at what the infiltration level hybrid war that's been going on. Also interesting, you mentioned that Schmidt might be on television. He already has been on Russian television, seems to be the darling for the moment, right? For the moment for Vladimir Putin and also Mr. Lukashenko. So if we look on the greater level of Russian infiltration as well, is this mark to you a new front? Will we see more of these kind of cases? And what's our reaction going to be here in Europe?
Look, there's a war going on. It's not just in Ukraine, it's East-West, and Russians have been placing their spies and moles in place for decades. It's not just something recent. Of course, this is a surprise because Schmidt going over via Belarus to Russia, in effect, this is such an act of treachery and a stab in the back to Poland, given Poland's role here in Eastern Europe and what it represents in Europe generally. And in terms of Belarus-Polish relations and Lithuanian relations. But look, let's be frank, as has been noted by the other speaker, espionage takes many forms. And you have moles, people have been in place for years, working quietly, waiting for their moment. Perhaps this was his moment. Maybe there was a trigger that he was in trouble with the Polish authorities or his cover was about to be blown. We don't know. but there are thousands of potential ad hoc mercenaries willing to throw a cocktail bomb, kill somebody, whatever. Not all the refugees from Ukraine are Ukrainian patriots. A lot of them escaped because they didn't want to be in the army and may have pro-Russian sympathies, particularly in Germany, say.
We've seen that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen
So, you know, we have to be very vigilant and careful. And of course, we have cyber espionage going on constantly. So I don't think there's anything here that surprises us other than it's a Polish judge, it's his office, right? But if we assume that the person has already been connected, and this is his moment when he was either about to be unveiled or felt it was time to jump the ship, then it makes sense. And of course, they will exploit this. But, you know, so at the end of the day, there will be also, I presume, defectors, high-ranking defectors coming from the East, which will be made use of in the West. So, you know, it's a continuation of the war by other means.
Indeed. In continuation of the war by other means, I want to ask the next question now, because I think also the reaction, Jacek, we've heard also this week Prime Minister Donald Tusk saying very much he will revive this commission investigating Russian influence. Some might perceive that as an interesting turnaround, seeing as the opposition last year was very much against this. So how do you look at this? What are the optics of this kind of commission? What does that mean for Poland?
Well, there are two different cases. One is the law, which is still partly in power, concerning the Special Commission for Russian Influence, and this law is unconstitutional. So that's why it was criticized by previous opposition and now government coalition, because, for example, it entitles this commission to determine who is influenced and who is the source of influence, of Russian influence in Poland, without legal chance to overturn it. But the idea Tusk promotes now is to establish this kind of commission, but in constitutional frames. This is possible, of course. This will not be so rapidly effective. I mean, they will not be able to politically kill somebody in one day, as they tried before against Tusk, for example, because there was a famous information from this commission that Donald Tusk is danger for Poland because of Russian influences just before elections. This is not constitutional. But what we need really is to go through our history in last 20 or 25 years, when many signs of this influence on the highest ranks of Polish politics was present. And Tusk mentioned some of them during his speech in Polish Parliament, when he mentioned Antoni Macierewicz and the problem of Caracal helicopters. He postponed the agreement with France, under which we were expected to buy part of these helicopters. That would be essential to defend Poland against Russia. We know that because we have no helicopters in the army, in fact. So, well, there was many signs like this, and we must examine them now. Was it because Macierewicz is stupid? Was it commercial problem? Or was it Russian influence? And many people believe that people like Antoni Macierewicz are just Russian agents of influence.
Right. But I guess what we have to now establish, and which will be difficult, I think, is how much this will be led by politics and how much will be led by national interest. So what do you say about this new commission that's coming back, what Jacek has just said? What's the way forward now? And is the Prime Minister, is this government doing it the correct way, or what's your perspective on it?
Unfortunately, I have no detailed information about the operation of the Commission, and it's very difficult to find people who are cooperating with foreign powers because of their ideological beliefs, some closeness to the worldview of Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping, or they are just paid. So Where's the border when people are betraying the country or believe that they're doing something in the interest of the country, but apparently their beliefs and their ideas are quite close to the right-wing or left-wing authoritarian regime in the East. So it's really very difficult to establish.
Yeah, I know, Bogdan, you want to jump
if I
in
may
there?
just broaden it out. I mean, Poland has a very good opportunity to set an example for other countries in Europe. If this commission is prepared properly, then it sets an example. I said we're at war, and whether Europe wants to accept that fact or not, it's under threat internally by all sorts of forces. We have the European elections coming. The far right is probably going to make advances. Russian agents and other agents, Chinese influence, etc. Europe has to defend itself. There's a notion called defensive democracy, where in wartime, certain restrictions are limited. The challenge is not to make it like the Russian model being emulated in Georgia, foreign agents, right? But to do it properly so that there is a very serious vetting of potential enemies or traitors, because they do exist. And I think for too long, Europe has taken the ostrich approach, head in the sand, we're above it, and this is a threat to democracy if we move. So Poland, if it does this properly and above board and, shall we say, openly, it could set an example for others.
Sure. Interesting point there, and I think this will probably have an impact very much on the level of looking at vetting, I suppose, for judges and different sort of positions in the government. But as Bogdan has said, you know, Poland needs to set an example. It's going to be a difficult example to set. So, Dmitry, what's your take on it? On which level? Because, I mean, this is not just a Polish issue. This is a European issue at the same time. So how do you see this take shape in the next months?
So I think it's a difficult question because there are many now interesting cases around Europe, like Georgia, Moldova, etc., and probably the new situation after Euro Parliament elections will be also. I think some problems between the Euro Commission and Poland. It's just during elections was, but I want to say another case. I think that it's very important to organize a professional discussion between Polish authorities, Polish experts, together with Georgia, Moldova, Belarusians, probably Russian opposition, to also with Euro Commission experts to analyze what happened now in the region, because now we start in a new era of iron curtain. Two borders now between West and East, and probably it will be for a long period, and new problems will be against people, and it's new attacks from the Putin and Lukashenko regime will be against Poland, against Euro Union. It's very important to analyze these topics and do something for changes.
Mm-hmm. But we always, I want to come back to what Bogdan said. You said, you know, the European approach has been, unfortunately, to a large extent, with that ostrich head buried in the sand. We always seem to be reacting here. Now we're looking at, you know, trying to play the blame game here, which some might say is not really constructive. So is this maybe now finally one of the, unfortunately, many examples where Europe will finally wake, not just Poland, but we've seen the same cases also on high level in Germany with spies. We've seen what's come out of the Czech Republic with its findings. Is this the moment now that Poland and Europe collectively really change on a lot of this, I think on a security level, that really maybe has gone under the radar for too long? What do you say, Jacek?
I'm absolutely sure this is the right moment to do it. Mm-hmm. Whether it will happen, well, this is much more difficult. First, because these influences are active. They will oppose, they will organize opposition. Second, because it's very difficult as far as you look at human rights and foundations of democracy, freedom of speech and freedom of opinion. You mentioned this problem is very difficult to separate stupid opinions or destructive opinions from agency. But, well, I think we must work very hard on it.
Yeah.
Because this is really existential threat for Europe and for democracy.
Yeah.
And I would just add, historically, Western Europe has become, over the decades, very complacent. It's had a good time, prosperity for most of the years, was able to accept a massive inflow of outsiders, refugees, migrants, etc.
We are strong, we will manage.
But it got weak on actually understanding what human rights are about. And the first wake-up calls were from Charter 77, from Solidarity, from Poland, from Eastern Europe. And again, Eastern Europe now, after what's happened in Ukraine, with the Baltic states, after what happened in Belarus. I mean, this is the bastion, shall we say, of the modern interpretation, which is not purely defensive, but is actually saying, wake up, guys, where is the solidarity? Where is the long-term vision of where this is leading to? And what we have to do at this stage. So here I think Poland and others, the Belarusian opposition, Ukraine, I hope, and others will set a standard. Talking to my English friends, I'm from Britain, there is this complacency, anything goes. And, oh yes, it's a human rights violation. Don't call him by that name. Don't point a finger if somebody is aggressing somebody else. Just stay back. For democracy to flourish, it needs the framework with the security built in and the rules being able to apply, with judgment, fair judgment from the top, that this is fair, this is over the hill too much, play by the rules. And this is one we're not seeing. And we need countries in Eastern Europe together in a kind of de facto alliance to set the tone. Set the tone and to remind people about standards.
Yeah, but also interesting you said from a regional perspective, and I think there's going to be some very big differences if we already look at Poland and Hungary, close histories, but also seems to be very different paths. We'll talk about that in a moment. I just want to get your view quickly, Alexander, on the fact that we mentioned earlier, there are a certain number, thousands of Belarusians who've escaped to Poland, to the Baltic states, across Europe. Millions of Ukrainians as well across Europe. Will this now, from a security sort of perspective, have any impact on how they're viewed here in this situation?
I recently read the article of Zbigniew Prafianowicz. It's a very famous Polish journalist who said that this case of Schmidt, Thomas Schmidt, defector, will impact the security situation, and probably these dozens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people escaping from authoritarian regimes are present any dangers. Their number overwhelmed the abilities of Polish security service. Frankly speaking, I don't think so. I'm much more optimistic about Europe, and I will say why. This wake-up call was at 4th of February 2022. I would like to remind that hundreds of Russian diplomatic personnel officials who dealt with intelligence issues were removed from Europe, and all the security experts say that now Russia lost their intelligence officers in the EU, and they now try to recruit some organized crime leaders, some mobsters, to make the operations previously made by professional officers. So this is the case, and now this like the attack on Volkov, on Leonid Volkov, which I mentioned, it was also made by organized crime, not by professional killers, like it was in case of Hangashvili in Berlin several years ago, or in case of Skripal. So the security services of the European countries are already fighting, and I truly believe that they can manage this situation, and the ability to give the asylum to the people from Belarus, from Russia, it also gives it weakens those regimes. I already mentioned that in the recently adopted national security national security documents adopted in Belarus, migration, so flight of people is described as security threat because they need soldiers for the army in case of future war. The same is for Russia.
Interesting point there.
May I just add some observations?
Just brief, short.
Look, the potential for getting collaborators and spies and mercenaries is greater now than it was before. Traditionally, Russia relied on the far left, on the leftists. Now it has the far right, France, Germany, whatever. I think the other factors here are that I think the Belarusian exiles, refugees, have had a raw deal. They've not been dealt with as fairly as perhaps the Ukrainians. They were initially dealt with, but since then, not just in Poland, but in Germany, in Spain, in other countries, for some reason, the Belarusians who've had to flee for political reasons are equated with Lukashenko, and they are sort of pushed back. Ukrainians are still more or less tolerated. There's still sympathy, but there's Ukraine fatigue, yeah? And depending on how Poland and other countries handle the issue of mobilization, cooperation with Zelensky in getting Ukrainian men back or not, will also determine attitudes in this very large pool of population. And some of them potentially could become a nuisance or a dangerous factor.
And that's, I think, an incredibly important one as we look at, indeed, how that's going to be structured. Also, Lithuanians and the Polish authorities have said that this is going to be... I'm afraid we're going to have to still move on to our next topic. We'll hopefully weave in that. Look, we're still covering the region and now looking at a very high-profile visitor who made it to Europe this past week. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping concluded his 5-day diplomatic tour of Europe on Friday. The visit marked the leader's first arrival in the region in 5 years and presented an opportunity to raise important questions about the country's relationship with Russia and the Kremlin's war against Ukraine.
France was the first country to roll out the red carpet for the Chinese head of state. Back in 2019, Paris accused Beijing of subsidizing industries that harmed French companies. This casted a shadow over the country's relationship. Steve Tsang from the China Institute suggests that Xi believes China doesn't have an overcapacity issue and finds the European stance on Beijing-made electric vehicles unreasonable. The ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia was also a prominent topic during the talks. Xi emphasized that China doesn't plan to cut ties with the Kremlin and called for negotiations with Putin.
We oppose using the Ukraine crisis to cast blame, smear a third country and incite a new Cold War.
A stop in Belgrade came 2 days later, coinciding with the 25th anniversary of the NATO bombing of the Chinese embassy in the city. Last year, the two sides signed a trade agreement that has become a centerpiece of the talks. The partnership will take effect in June. The leaders also agreed to establish new air links and import Serbian agricultural products.
Serbia is the first European country to build a community of shared future with China. This fully demonstrates the special, strategic and high level of China-Serbia relations.
Hungary was Xi's last stop. Over the past few years, the two states have established very close relations, especially in terms of trade.
If we compare the economic relations between our two countries with the situation 20 years ago, we see that during the last Chinese presidential visit preceding this one, the value of our trade was $3 billion, and now it is $12 billion.
The two leaders worked out numerous agreements that will lead to, among other things, the construction of a high-speed rail link between Budapest and its airport, and a $2.1 billion project for a railway connecting the capitals of Hungary and Serbia that will be largely financed by a loan from China.
Now, when it comes to Hungary in particular, I think the local press there did not fall short of the highest applause for this China-Hungary relations. But I want to start with you because I think it is an interesting point here. I mean, the way that Xi Jinping was received, red carpet treatment on the highest level in Hungary especially. We talked earlier about the relationship between also how Hungary differs from Poland. How do you interpret Xi Jinping's visit and ending in Hungary?
Well, look, Hungary and Serbia, the only factor missing here was perhaps Slovakia now. These are countries that are aligned with Moscow, de facto aligned with China. So no big surprises.
Very publicly so.
For them, for Budapest, and for the Serbs, this is a moment of seeming importance, in the international scene. They're suddenly given the limelight. But I think much more important is Macron's talks with Xi, because Macron is projecting this image of Europe being able to fend for itself if America withdraws, because we don't know what's going to happen in November. Chinese and Russians are hoping that perhaps Trump will still get in and not be blocked, so that things might change. And they have something in common. Macron wants to make Europe strong again, not make Europe great. I don't want to repeat
Yeah, right.
that.
Okay,
but
careful there.
At least more self-sufficient and more able to protect its interests, which means also economic, not just military and arms and everything else. What is China interested? China is interested in pushing the American influence out, keeping the Russians in place, because for the longer term they are going to have the upper hand. Russia is becoming increasingly dependent on its connection with China, economic, arms, whatever, political, etc. So, and I think Xi's message was, let's forget the war, laissez-faire, it continues, but the main thing is business, partnerships, and making sure that the Americans don't push us around, So that was his main message, whereas Macron's was at least make an effort, come to the peace talks that the Ukrainians are organizing next June to kind of stymie the Russian effort and at least make them realize that they don't have the whole world behind them. Yeah. So I think a mixed bag with different motives and different motivations in the various countries.
Yeah, different motivations as well. And I think also collectively, Dmitry, if you look at this, because I think China and Xi Jinping had a sort of opportunity here, very much about rapprochement with Europe, right? I mean, it's still incredibly important economic partnership. But he chose very much, I think, division going on that. So what does that send the signal? Was that, did he have success in that? I mean, obviously we've seen the scenes in Belgrade, we've seen the scenes in Budapest, but how does it resonate around the rest of our region here? Did that actually arrive? Will there be a change in terms of what Poland does, what the Baltic states do with China?
I think China wanted to increase influence in Europe. I agree your position that China wanted to more and more influence in Europe, and I believe that China is one country who is biggest beneficiary on the war in Ukraine, due to now influence in Russia, due to some resources that China received from Russia, and due to probably in future China will be play a strong role in rebuilding Ukraine. Like some investment or some another project, energy sector, etc. Probably yes. And my view is that China will be organize some probably measures to realize some projects not only in Europe, also in Russia and Belarus. But Belarus for China is influence from Moscow. As I understand that Belarus is not independent state. They just look to Belarus like influence place from Moscow. That is why for leader of China, it's very important to also communicate with Putin. Putin next weeks probably will go to China, and probably they will speak about situation in Europe, because China is number 2 today in the world economy, and China understand what happened in the next years in Europe. Europe will be another after this war.
Right. Well, I'm just conscious of the time. I still want to get Jacek's view on this. I mean, also if we're looking at, I think it was no accident. It was in Budapest that Xi Jinping ended his journey. Hungary will take over that rotating EU Council president in July. That element is also in this. What does that signal to Europe collectively as a whole at Xi Jinping's visit and with Hungary?
Well, that there are client states of China in European Union and in Europe. Like Hungary, like Serbia, But this is also interesting for Poland because the forthcoming visit of Polish president to China seems to be very important for Andrzej Duda. And preparations are very, very deep and serious. And the problem is how to deal with China for countries, small-sized countries like Poland, how to deal with China and not become its client. This is the problem. And it's impossible for Hungary. Hungary has a size of one of 34 or something like that cities in China. Mm-hmm. This is a medium-sized Chinese city. So this is not important partner. This is important airport. This is important place to put the food and be in Europe. Mm-hmm. And look at the competition, because the Chinese factory producing electric cars was supposed to be located in Poland. Mm-hmm. And now it will be located in Hungary, and this is the price we pay for democracy. But I believe it is worth, of course.
Mm-hmm. I'm conscious of the time, so just briefly, Alex, also, we've seen very much that Orban is very much Putin's man in Europe, and to a certain extent. Is he also now Xi Jinping's man in Europe? Just briefly at the end.
He tries to play between the different centers of power, and he tries to maintain his power by opposing, just like blackmailing. If you don't give me what I want from the European Union, I will go to China or I will go to Russia. It's a very clever authoritarian strategy, which also was used for many years by Lukashenko, but at the end it's not very efficient.
Not very efficient indeed. Yeah, just closing comment here.
Yes, look, China and Ukraine, it's a win-lose situation. At the moment, China is winning through influence, but it's lost temporarily various things. China was Ukraine's biggest trading partner. The EU was coming up before the war started. Odessa was one of its main outlets for its products to the outside world. And, you know, they were rebuilding the Silk Road and everything. So that has gone. Mm-hmm. And we forget about this. So the Chinese have had to deal with it. And in the middle, they've got this rambunctious Russia in between. Yes, China may be very interested in helping to rebuild Ukraine. But if a decent deal is reached short of full victory for Ukraine and the West, where is China's place going to be? They're going to be regarded as those who let the side down, that sold out to the Russians. Yeah. Maybe Turkey will take that place, or others, apart from the Americans and Europeans.
Well, it seems nevertheless that it's demonstrated again how, in certain ways, Europe remains still divided on China, different policies from Germany to Hungary. But we'll have to leave that analysis for another time. Look, I want to thank each and one of you, starting with Jacek Żakowski, Alexander Papko, Bogdan Nahailo, Dmitry Balkubec. Thank you, gentlemen, for all your insights today. Appreciate it. And thank you for watching. That concludes this edition of Press Corner. See you next time. Goodbye.